as the Eleusinian mysteries are coming to an end, Samhain is approaching. And even though we'll touch on the Eleusinian mysteries in a bit, let's explore Samhain and its connections to the underworld. Samhain is the hinge of the year, the darkening point when autumn exhales its pleasant breath and winter closes in. It is the festival of thresholds, the space where endings and beginnings blur, and where the veil between the living and the dead thins to almost nothing. To enter Samhain is to step across the doorway, and fully in the world of the living, not yet claimed by the silence of the dead. It is the time when ancestors walk beside us, when ghosts and gods press close, when we are asked to remember that life is always shadowed by death. Myths across cultures tell of journeys into this in-between, into the underworld. Elias descending through the seven gates, Persephone carried into Hades, Orpheus seeking his beloved in the depths. Each descent is a kind of initiation, a ritual of confrontation with loss, with mortality, with the parts of ourselves that we would rather not face. So as the year itself dies, Samhain becomes a mirror of these underworld passages. To celebrate is to descend in our own way, into memory, into grief, into mystery. It asks us, what wisdom can only be found in the dark, and what must we become to return? First, let's explore Indiana Ishtar's descent from ancient Mesopotamia. If Samhain is a threshold, then no myth captures the act of crossing more vividly than the descent of Indiana. Written in Sumer thousands of years ago, it tells us of the goddess Indiana, later called Ishtar in Akkadian tradition, who chose to enter the underworld, the realm of her sister, Ereshkigal. Indiana is not dragged down unwillingly. She chooses to go. She sets her mind on the great below, and as she passes through each of the seven gates, she is stripped, first of her crown, then her necklace, her blessed braid, her rings, her robe. Piece by piece, the symbols of her power, her beauty, her identity are taken from her, until she stands naked and bowed before the queen of the dead. What follows is annihilation. Indiana is judged, struck down, and hung on a hook like a carrion. It is only through the intervention of her allies and through the strange exchange of empathy with her grieving sister that she is allowed to rise again, but never unchanged. Scholars often read this myth as an allegory of agricultural cycles, of fertility descending into barrenness and rising anew. But is this also an initiation text? The image of being stripped to nothing, enduring symbolic death, and returning transformed is at the heart of countless mystery traditions. Indiana's descent shows us what Samhain makes visible, that power is not preserved by holding onto our crowns and ornaments, but by surrendering them, by daring to pass through the gates of loss. Death is not simply an end, it is a passage, a stripping, and a transformation. Splits open. From the chasm rises Hades, god of the underworld, who seizes her and drags her below. This is not a willing crossing as one of Indiana. Persephone is torn from her mother, Demeter, whose grief is so vast that the world becomes barren. No crops grow, no food ripens until her daughter is returned. But even in her return, there is compromise. Persephone has eaten the food of the dead, the pomegranate seeds binding her to the underworld for a portion of each year. This cyclical rhythm, her time above and her time below, became the mythic foundation for Greek understandings of the season. Her descent is winter, her return is spring. Death and renewal are locked in eternal exchange. Yet there is more to her than agriculture. Persephone's story is also a myth of initiation, central to the Eleusinian mysteries. The descent is to eat of death, and to return is not just nature and its cycle, but a human cycle. The confrontation with mortality that defines our spiritual transformation. At Samhain, when harvest is complete and the earth becomes empty, Persephone's presence feels immediate. We too live in a season of compromise, half with the light, half with the dark. Her objection reminds us that descent is not always chosen. Sometimes the underworld takes us, suddenly, through grief, through trauma, through loss, and still we must learn to live with the rhythm it imposes. If Indiana descends by choice and Persephone by force, Orpheus descends out of love. In the Greek myth of Eurydice, his bride dies on wedding day, bitten by a serpent. Overcome with grief, Orpheus takes his lyre and dares what few mortals attempt. He enters the underworld itself to bring her back. His music charms the guardians of the dead. Cerberus is still, the shades pause to listen, even Hades and Persephone grants him mercy. They allow Eurydice to return to the living world on a single condition, that Orpheus does not look back at her until both have crossed the threshold. But at the very edge of the world above, doubt seizes him. In a moment of longing, wanting proof that she is still there, he turns. And in that glance, Eurydice is lost forever. The myth is often read as tragedy, the image of love's fragility in the face of death. Yet it also speaks of the tension of all underworld journeys, the difficulty of fate when the way forward is dark, the almost unbearable task trusting what yet cannot be seen. At Samhain, Orpheus' story echoes the will we pull towards our death. We call their names like candles, set places at the table. Like Orpheus, we can never fully bring them back. The sun teaches not possession, but remembrance that the dead walk with us in spirit. But the boundary, it remains. His failure is also a gift, the reminder that grief is not resolved by erasing death, but by learning to carry absence as a part of love. And now let's explore 3 mythic figures. The heroic Catabasis, Hercules, Odysseus, and Aeneas, ancient Greco-Roman world. Not every descent is born of grief or abduction. In Greek and Roman epic, the journey to the underworld becomes a test of strength, of cunning, of destiny itself. Where Elias and Persephone embody surrender, the heroes embody confrontation. For Hercules, the Catabasis is his 12th and final labor, to drag the 3-headed hound Cerberus from the realm of Hades to the world of the living. He wrestles the beast in submission and emerges triumphant. His descent is less about transformation than about conquest, proving that no boundary, even death, can resist his might. For Odysseus, the journey is subtler. Guided by Circe, he descends to speak with the shade of Tiresias, the prophet who alone can reveal how may he return home. His Catabasis is not conquest, but consultation. Death as the realm of knowledge, where wisdom needed for survival must be sought. For Aeneas, the hero of Rome, this ascent is destiny. In Virgil's Aeneid, Aeneas ventures below not for love or for knowledge alone, but to encounter spirits of Rome's future. He sees the souls of great leaders, yet unborn learns the burden of empire, and accepts his fate role. His Catabasis is civic, collective, the dead guiding the living toward the work they must fulfill. These 3 journeys show a shift, the underworld not simply as the land of endings, but as a place where identity is tested, where authority is conferred. For the hero's descent is initiation into power, whether personal, prophetic, or imperial. Samhain, these myths remind us that death is not only absence but also archive. To enter the realm of the dead is to seek out what is hidden, strength, vision, legacy. Just as the Celts honored their ancestors in this season, these heroes model how descent can bind the living into the wisdom of those who came below. And by the time we reach Dante, medieval Italy, the underworld has become codified, mapped, moralized, and the Inferno, written in the early 14th century. Dante descends not by grief, love, or heroic labor, but by spiritual necessity. Guided by Virgil, he journeys through 9 cycles of hell, encounters sinners, punished according to the justice of God, each tormented reflections of earthly vice. Dante's Catabasis is both personal and cosmic. It is an allegory of the soul's journey towards salvation. He must confront sin, recognize the consequences of human choice, and learn the divine order that underpins existence. Unlike Orpheus, who failed to retrieve his beloved, or Persephone, whose abduction is cyclical and unavoidable, Dante descends with clear purpose and with reason, guided by wisdom. If there is still terror in this journey, the landscape of hell is grotesque. It is horrifying, relentless. The descent here is not metaphorical alone, it is immersive, demanding empathy and moral reflection. It forces Dante, and by extension the reader, to witness the cost of human action and to reckon with the shadowed dimensions of life. At Samhain, Dante's Inferno resonates in a different register. The festival's thinning veils allows us to confront the unseen, the uncomfortable, the morally complex. Like Dante, we are called not to only honor the dead, but to examine the consequences of living, to walk with the shadow as well as light. And in Celtic mythology, the underworld, or the otherworld, is neither wholly dark nor wholly deadly. It is a realm of liminality, a place of magic, transformation, and encounter with forces beyond the mortal eye. Unlike the rigid hierarchies of Dante's Hell or the strict gates of Indiana's Descent, Celtic underworld is fluid. Rivers and mists, islands and palaces accessible through caves, wells, or the thinnest space between worlds. Consider Oisin and Tirnanok. The young poet warrior crosses to an eternal land of youth and beauty, where time bends and mortality is suspended. The journey is voluntary, joyous, yet it carries a warning. When he returns to the mortal world, centuries have passed. The other world, even in wonder, transforms those who enter. Orku Chulai, excuse me, I don't know how the hell to pronounce these. I'm just reading it as it is. Whose encounters with otherworldly women, warrior queens, prophetic figures, teach them strength, knowledge, and caution. These journeys are both literal and symbolic. They prepare the hero to navigate life and death, war and peace, the seen and unseen. And no matter how I pronounce the names, I butcher it. At Samhain, the otherworld becomes tangible. The veil thins, allowing spirits, ancestors, and the sacred dead to move near. Celtic myth teaches that these encounters are not merely specters of fear. They are gifts. They provide guidance, wisdom, and the mirror for your own passage through thresholds. The sense is not always suffering. It can be both vision and communion with the eternal. The Celtic underworld emphasizes the fluidity of life and death, mirroring the festival of Samhain itself. Here the living and dead dance together, revealing that the underworld journeys are not simply stories of loss. They are maps for navigating liminality and the spaces where transformation is possible. It shows us where the wisdom of the dead illuminates the living. And underworld journeys across myth. Indiana's choice, Persephone's abduction, Orpheus' love, the heroics of Heracles, Odysseus, and Aeneas, Dante's moralized hells, and the Celtic underworld share a fundamental structure: descent, confrontation, and return. Descent is never merely geographical, it is symbolic. It represents death, loss, grief, and shadow parts of the self, but it also embodies initiation, wisdom, and transformation. Samhain, more than any other festival, mirrors the structure. The thinning veil between the worlds invites us into a liminal space, a seasonal underworld of our own. To honor this descent is to venerate ancestry. You can leave candles, offerings, speak names, by recalling those who came before. We acknowledge the flow of life and wisdom embedded in lineage. We can also explore the shadows. We confront mortality, grief, and parts of ourselves that are usually hidden. Just as Indiana and Persephone were stripped of identity or forced into unknown, we need the truths we often avoid. Or we can do something even more practical and do spirit work. Myths remind us that communication with the dead is possible, whether through ritual, dream, or meditation. Like Celtic heroes crossing into the otherworld or Orpheus pleading for Eurydice, we approach with reverence and humility. The descent of Samhain is not a passive act of fear, it is the active engagement with liminality, a conscious acknowledgement of ending cycles and thresholds. It is a space to grieve, to honor, to commune, and ultimately to return, transform with insight, with gratitude, with guidance for the months ahead. And this way, myth becomes practice. The underworld, or let's return to the underworld, it's never elsewhere, only it is woven into the human experience, mirrored in seasonal change and ritual and memory. Samhain asks us to descend and to be consumed, but to emerge more whole, carrying the light of remembrance through the darkness. All underworld journeys, Indiana's daring choice, Persephone's cyclical abduction, Orpheus' desperate love, the heroic trials of Heracles, Odysseus, and Aeneas, Dante's moral descent into the Celtic underworld teach the same truth. The descent is to learn, to confront, to transform. The underworld is never a place of finality alone. This is a threshold, a teacher, and a mirror of the shadow itself and the eternal cycle that binds life and death. At Samhain, we step into the same threshold. The veil thins, inviting the living to commune with the dead, the known to mingle with the unseen, and candles prickling of the heart. In the empty chairs set for ancestors, whisper names and offerings. We honor the sun as ritual. We grieve, we remember, we we explore the shadows of our own hearts. The descent is never without return. As Indiana rises, as Persephone cycles, as Orpheus' music fades into memory, so too do we emerge from this subliminal space, transformed, rooted in the wisdom of those who walk before us, and guided by insight, love, and remembrance. Samhain is a map for this journey. The festival as catalysis, the festival as initiation and communion. By embracing the descent, we are reminded that darkness is not absence. It is a fertile ground of transformation, of this place where grief becomes insight, where loss becomes reverence, where mortality becomes connection. This is the gift of myth. This is the gift of Samhain, to descend, to encounter the dead, to emerge changed, and to carry the light as remembrance with us. And to carry the light of remembrance with us into the returning year. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Elias, your host today, a trans-feminine occultist from the land of Latvia. I practice telema and paganism. And I just love myth. I love festivals. I love magic and religion. That's how it is. That's how I'll end off the video. Have a fun Samhain and have fun just embracing the season that comes before it, within it, and after it. Thank you.